Hello there, fellow peregrinos. Thanks for tuning in to the very first weekly episode of the Pilgrims podcast, where we talk about planning, preparation and practicalities of life on the road to Santiago, El Camino de Santiago. In the interview, we hear from Tiera St. Clair from Hawaii, who will tell us how she beat blisters, her favorite albergues and places she recommends you visit along the way. We started, though, with me asking her how and why she made the decision to go on the Camino. Here's what she had to say.
My marriage was getting really rough, and it had been for about 3 years, maybe even 5 years. And the Camino just started coming to me. I wasn't looking for something to do. I'd pick up a book, like a novel. I remember reading some novel, and it had this thing about the Camino in it. It was just a novel about, and Charlemagne and something about Roncesvalles. And then I turned on the television at one point, and there was a travel show with someone doing the Camino. And I'm like, oh, that was in that book. And then I needed a book to read, a couple of months later, and someone loaned me a book, Shirley MacLaine's Camino. And then I walked into my, at the time, husband's room a couple of months after that, and he had Paulo Coelho's book on the Camino. So it just started coming and coming, and I said, okay, I'm doing this. And my marriage was clearly over, and we went and got a divorce. It wasn't a dramatic thing of fighting and all of that. We went to the courthouse, got a divorce, and toasted each other with a bottle of wine saying, good job. And it's not anything I ever had a thought about or a plan to do before it started just coming to me.
It's often said, Tiera, that the Camino finds you rather than the other way around. So that was obviously the case with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have heard that, and I think it's 100% of the case. It calls to people. I've shared it with so many people, and some people, they just kind of glaze over, and some people it wakes them up. So, yeah.
Okay, so you read a couple of books, and obviously it was the Camino came along at a time for you when maybe you needed some headspace and some time to make sense of it all. You made the very adult decision, like it sounds like you made with your husband, to raise a glass and just say thanks for the good times and time to move on. Yeah,
that's right.
And tell us about obviously where you started and why you decided to start there.
Well, I began in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and I started there because it seemed like that was the cool place to start. Shirley MacLaine and Paulo Coelho started there, and I'd gotten online and just done a lot of investigating, and that just seemed like a good starting place. I liked the idea of the Pyrenees, and I liked the idea of walking from France to Spain. I was in the States at the time, and I flew into London and then flew into Biarritz, and then took a train from Biarritz to Bayonne and then into Saint-Jean.
So anyone that's thinking about starting their Camino, you've just heard that obviously Shirley MacLaine and Paulo Coelho, two very famous authors, started theirs there. And the way to get there, like Tiera says, is literally just to fly to Biarritz, and then you can get a train to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port from there. For those that are arriving there, Tiera, can you recommend a place for them to stay? Obviously, they might have travelled far and had a very long journey to get there. Where did you stay in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and would you recommend it?
I walked into what at the time was the pilgrim's office, and they recommended a place. There seemed to be a lot of them, and I doubt that there would be a wrong one. I think just like the Camino calls you, you end up with the places and the people. I ended up in some place, I actually don't remember what it was called, but there I was lying on my bed. I always choose the top bunk. Most people choose the bottom.
Why the top bunk?
I think there's more air up there.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely true.
And I don't mind the climb, that I'm pretty agile.
Maybe you're a cat in a former life, because cats always like to be on the top, right?
I'm so funny. This amused me so much about myself. I was on my little bed on my first night. I was kind of wriggling with happiness, and I looked over and I saw this man petting a cat, and I thought, oh look, he's bringing his cat on the Camino, and I thought it was so charming. But actually, the cat, of course, lived in the albergue, not with the man on the Camino. But what that did was it sort of highlighted that person for me. So the next day when I saw him getting ready to go, we started chatting, and I ended up walking most of the Camino off and on with him. His name was Jules, and he'd been walking since, I don't know, he'd walked already like 600 miles or something. He began north of France, yeah. But one caveat I would say about beginning in Saint Jean, which I've seen because I have done the Camino a number of times since, is that people with knee problems can have a really hard time. I mean, it's difficult going up. It's just hard, but that's okay. The coming down can really make the difference between a very painful Camino from then on or not. So if you have bad knees, I don't necessarily recommend beginning in Saint Jean, because the going down for the few days after can really put a strain after that really big uphill climb.
I mean, for those of you who don't know what Tiera is referring to, the first day from Saint Jean is, I think it's like a 17-kilometer hike way up into the Pyrenees, and then you have to come all the way down again. I think it's like an 8-kilometer drop into Roncesvalles. And yeah, that could be tough on the knees. So, maybe it's, for those that maybe want to have a bit of a softer start, they could start the other side of the border and miss out that big climb in Roncesvalles. So yeah, depending on what you want to get out of your Camino, maybe depending on your level of fitness, that might be a decision you could make. Because I found one mistake I made, like I did the Portuguese Camino last year, and that was doing too much too soon in the first few days. I think I paid for it after doing a 30 plus on my first day. The next 3 or 4 days were just, I was walking like a robot, basically. So yeah, that's a really, really helpful tip there. Thanks, Tiera. Now, in terms of talking about problems, blisters, did you have them, and how did you deal with them?
Well, Brad, I've just been reading, your wonderful book and loving it. And you talk about blisters, and I have seen people with blisters that I cringe, and I had almost none. Maybe in the third week, I developed a few between my toes, was the only place, because my toes swelled, and then I got some between my toes, but they weren't even that painful. And I actually attribute it to, I carry a pack that's the size of, actually smaller than most day packs. And I don't wear boots. I wear either, like running shoes or heavy duty hiking sandals. And the people who I see who are getting the blisters have really heavy packs and really heavy boots on. So that's my thoughts on that.
So you would attribute not having blisters to not wearing boots and not carrying too much weight?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one thing that we can try. I mean, I suffered very badly from blisters. I probably carried too much weight when I first started as well. But I did meet a French guy who told me, and this was just inside the Spanish border, and he'd walked all the way from Paris, and he told me that he put Vaseline on his feet every 20 kilometers, and he hadn't had one single blister. I've heard other people talk about wearing actually like proper trekking socks made of wool. I think, if there was a formula that everyone knew, then no one would get blisters, would they? So I think it's just about trying different things. But it's strange that you have blisters actually 3 weeks into it, because normally it's when you first break in your feet in, isn't it? So.
Well, and I am someone who walks a lot anyway, so walking a lot was not that. I also, now that you're saying that, I had what are called anti-blister socks, which are very thin, but they're 2 layers. Okay. So you can get them in trekking stores. The kind I had was Wright, WRIGHT, and they're thin, but the one layer that's rubbing against the shoe is not the same layer that's rubbing against the foot. So I think those are quite good as well.
That could be a really helpful tip. Thank you so much. To add to that, what I'm getting from that is that it would be a good idea to make sure that you have broken your footwear in before you take on the Camino, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you said you do a lot of walking anyway.
I do. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So in terms of problems, a lot of problems. One of the problems I had when I first started was getting some rejuvenating sleep in the albergues. Obviously, with the lots of people, there's some noise, background noise, bag rustlers, snoring, headlamps. Have you got any albergue survival tips?
It just surprises me every time when I hear people snoring that way, and I actually wish they would have the room for people who snore because they get plenty of sleep. They don't seem to be bothered by all that sound at all. I don't. I mean, earplugs, those really light ones are the ones I use. And I don't really like something in my ear, but I will use them. I actually find the bag rustlers to be the most annoying because they do have a choice to not do that. Whereas I guess people who are snoring, it's just, they can't stop themselves by deciding to. But people who are rustling the bloody bags and, at 4 o'clock in the morning.
4 o'clock in the morning, the carrier bag is rustling in your ears, and that's where the devil takes over, isn't it?
So that there's some etiquette there that it would be really nice if people would be somewhat considerate and but I do find for me, and this is possibly different for most people, I find it easier to sleep in the big open rooms with loads of people than I do in the smaller, more enclosed rooms with just a couple of people.
With like the barrack style bunks.
Yeah, like in Roncesvalles, that huge vaulted ceiling and I don't know, maybe 200 bunks or something. That's easier for me than a small room that's enclosed where the sound kind of bounces back to me from the walls rather than going more dispersed.
And like you said, there's more air in those rooms as well. So albergue survival tips, what we're saying is, earplugs. That was definitely a game changer for me. I bought some earplugs a couple of days in and that definitely helped me to sleep. And also bag rustlers amongst you, maybe, as Tiera says, maybe could it be a good idea to be a little bit more considerate and pack your bag before you go to sleep, and then you don't have to do it at 4 o'clock in the morning when everyone else is sleeping. Just a bit of food.
Go out of the room.
Just a bit of food for thought. Or do it out of the room. No one's going to do anything bad, but they might take the laces out your boots while you're sleeping. Who knows? Okay. So talking of surviving, was there one thing in your kit list that you could not have done without?
I have a very small pack and I bought very few things, and it's just for me it's really about the basics. The thing that I would say, I see people who bring jars of things like plastic bottles of sun cream or shampoo or things like that, and I always put mine in little plastic Ziploc bags because it just weighs so much less and takes much less room. So that idea I wouldn't have liked to go without because it made everything so much lighter. And I brought a towel which was the size of a washcloth, and I would dry one half of me, wring it out, and dry the other half of me, rather than these big luxurious towels, which again are taking up so much room and so much weight. So that's more. It's not really one thing because it's the basics really, and that's what you don't do without. As far as anything extra, I bring a couple of really lightweight, kind of feminine scarves, just so I feel a little girly. If I want to go out at night, I can feel a little, I'm going out. And it also doubles if it gets cold or I want, a little extra something.
So the scarves to accessorize and feel a little bit girly, reward yourself after a hard day's graft on the road. Those Ziploc bags come in handy for multiple use. One thing I found very, 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 very useful, it's going to sound very silly, but is pegs. Because, you get to the albergue at the end of the long day walking and you rinse your clothes out in the sink or in the shower, and then you go to hang them out and there aren't any pegs to hang your socks on, because obviously I was rinsing my socks out at the end of every day, putting them on the line and obviously hoping they're dry for the next day. And sometimes if there's no pegs, then you can't guarantee that your sock has, taken a little trip somewhere else. So, I would say pegs, definitely a good one.
You can get really, really tiny ones now.
Tiny pegs?
They're almost like the size of a paper clip.
Right, okay. And you also said the other thing about the towel. So, like less is more in some respects, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I had a travel towel with me, which is a quick drying one. So you can, obviously it wasn't the size of a tea towel like yours, but I did find that very useful. And it does definitely weigh less than a normal domestic towel. So getting very technical here, talking domestic towels and travel towels. Anyway, what a conversation, huh? But all very good stuff for us pilgrims. One thing you took that you thought you'd used, but you would use, but you didn't.
When I began, I got rid of a couple of things on the second day, or maybe it was the third day. It was nail clippers. Those seemed too heavy. And I found a toothbrush that was lighter. Those kind you get in a hotel. They're really, really little and light, and they're not very nice. But I got rid of my nicer toothbrush and kept that one instead. And I let go of the journal that I was going to keep, because it was heavy, paper. I got rid of the book immediately. I don't even think that left St. John. I realized it was so heavy.
Yeah.
Then I would write like on little napkins and things that when I'd stop for coffee or something to eat.
So you had a journal on napkins?
Yes, I had a journal on napkins, exactly.
And then you got home and stapled it all together?
Well, I actually rewrote it onto the computer.
Brilliant. So you didn't want your journal in the end because that was too much weight. And sorry, what was the other thing you said?
Nail clippers.
The nail clippers, that's correct. Sorry, yeah. So how did you deal with that issue along the way? You just let them grow, or?
Well,
it's the Camino spirit, isn't it? Just let everything grow wild.
And the other thing about the Camino is that it's a place where people share. So I think one time toward the end, my toenails had gotten long, and I saw someone clipping their nails and asked if I could use theirs.
Right. Okay.
Right. I had a little tiny nail file, and I could just file them a little bit. So the other thing that I have found on the Camino so many times is that when you need something, it shows up. People all the time are leaving things behind, so it wouldn't even be unusual to find a pair of nail clippers that someone had left behind at an albergue and use them and leave them, or like one time I lost my little jumper that was keeping me warm, and I didn't want to go back for it, but then I found one along the way. So the Camino provides. If the Camino has called you, it provides for you.
I've heard that said many, many times. The Camino provides, and here is further evidence of that. So leave your nail clippers at home and borrow someone else's. You'll find some along the way. Or maybe you just want to bite them. I don't know. But biting your toenails would be difficult, wouldn't it? Unless you're a yogi.
I don't think I could go for.
But anyway, so one thing I took very foolishly with me on my first Camino was took a tent with me, thinking that I was going to camp out along the way and do it wild. And I spoke to an old guy in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and he just said to me, leave the tent at home. You don't need it. You can stay in the albergues. There's hostels every 10, 15 kilometers on most of the way. And there are days when you might have to do the odd 30 day, or in the Meseta, you might have to do a few longer days. But yeah, the provisions for accommodation along the way are really, really frequent, aren't they? So
they are frequent, and they're really nice. I mean, they're often quite simple. It's not like 5-star accommodation, but the beds are comfortable and it's clean.
Yeah.
And you also get the camaraderie. You can sit around the table and share a coffee or a beer and just talk about the day, and from, oh my God, how are your blisters, to, wow, I had the most amazing realization about my life. And I find that to be one of the joys of the Camino, that you can be with people who in their everyday life might be rather closed, but after you're walking so much for so long, the barriers come down, and you can be really real with people.
Talking of realizations, Tiera, you said you might have a realization about your life whilst walking. Is there any insight that you had, something that stands out?
The thing that became the most powerful or prominent awareness was what we were talking about, that the Camino provides. And when I left my first Camino, my intention for the rest of my life was to live my life as if life provides. And that it's not just the Camino, but the Camino is a condensed aspect of life, and that if I could just, trust enough and be open enough, that life would provide for me. And I have actually found that it's true. It's taken me a while to really trust as much in my everyday life as I do on the Camino, because it's, there's a magic about it, and it's easy to feel that magic on the Camino, but it is everywhere. Life is magical if you can let it be and not have to control everything, and go forth with an awareness of just being open, and being open to the people and the places and the everyday experiences.
So taking that revelation from the road that the Camino provides, in actual fact, it's not just that the Camino provides, you believe that life provides if you take we could say, an attitude of abundance and not scarcity.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not someone who's positive all the time. I can be quite pessimistic. So I'm not saying, just believe everything's good, and it is, because I don't. I'm not like that. But even when I'm pessimistic, life does provide for me. So it's way a deeper awareness than, if you think properly. I'm not talking like a new age slogan here, because I think that's kind of ridiculous, because sometimes I'm in a good mood and sometimes I'm in a bad mood, and sometimes I'm optimistic and sometimes I'm pessimistic. But if I can have an awareness that life made me and life is in charge of me, then things really do work out.
So again, taking that revelation into everyday life from the Camino is in some ways our biggest challenge, isn't it, when you leave the Camino behind?
Exactly. It's easier on the Camino because there's somehow a context for that magic.
And like you say, you are sometimes positive, sometimes negative, sometimes optimistic, sometimes pessimistic, but that is all the time being human, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I think that human element is one of the greatest things about when you meet other people on the Camino. Mm-hmm. And when you get to know someone, their kind of deepest inner secrets that ordinarily you might not even speak to this person if you walk past them on the street. And that is the Camino magic at work, breaking down societal barriers. And yeah, that's one of my favourite things on the Camino, for sure, about the Camino. Talking of favourite things, what was your favourite city on the Camino and why? Or your town or village, favourite city, town or village?
Well, my favourite area is Navarra. It's where Pamplona and Logroño and all those little towns are. It's hard to say why. I think the people are quite friendly. There's something in the basic architecture that I like. It's the beginning of the Camino, so again, there's that feeling of excitement that might add to it. I don't like Burgos as much as I like León or Ponferrada. And my least favorite town on the Camino is Santiago.
Really?
I don't actually like Galicia that much. I find it too rural. there's not very many cafes along the way or little towns to walk through. It's just mostly rural, and I don't enjoy it as much. And the Gallegos are not as friendly as, say, the Navarra or the people out in Leon and that. So
in Santiago, or should I say Galicia, you don't get the pinchos, the tapas like you do in Navarra. If you don't know what those are, and when you get there, you get the little, maybe it's the chorizo, or you get the little bits of like brie on the bread and the little cocktail stick through it, or a bit of fish on the bread. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And after you've walked 20, 25 kilometers up and over the Pyrenees, you can do a good few plates of those, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
Without a doubt. But it is true. Galicia is very sleepy. It is very rural, isn't it? And you might have to walk quite far between albergues to make sure you get a bed for the night. So I can understand that. I'm surprised to me you don't like Santiago, though. I absolutely love Santiago. Why don't you don't like the city itself?
Not really. I mean, I've been in a lot of cities in Spain, and it's almost always gray and raining, and the people are not smiling, and added to that, the Camino is done, which is the worst day on the Camino for me.
Yeah, true. That's back to reality, isn't it?
It's like, but I love this. I don't want it to be over.
I have that feeling every single time. Okay, so talking of more favourites, have you got a favourite albergue? Maybe because of a hospitalero or hospitalera?
I would say probably my favourite albergue is Boadilla en el Camino. It's on the Meseta, and the first time I went there, it's very, very hot. It was July, and it's hot in Spain anyway. And then when you're in the desert, it's even hotter. And I was walking with some friends, and we had said we would meet up in Fromista, which I was thinking I was walking on my way toward, and I walked into this little town which seemed almost not even like a town. I think it was Siesta, so it was just like these buildings and very, very, very small, and I didn't see a soul, not a person in sight. And I had lost my toothbrush a couple of days earlier, so my teeth were fuzzy, and I hadn't been able to find anywhere to get one. And I was trying to find some little store in this town. And I walked by this little area that was near the church in the middle of the town, and my head turned to the left, and I saw a swimming pool and green grass. And I didn't even have a thought that I can remember. My body just walked in. I thought I was walking into someone's home. It happened to be that it was an albergue, and it had a swimming pool and grass. And I just sat down on the grass and actually fell asleep. I don't know for how long, maybe 15 minutes or something, and then woke up and went, oh my God, where am I? Am I in someone's home? Have I just invaded some Spanish place? And I walked around the corner and realized I was in an albergue, and there were all these people around the corner that were having cold beers, and people had their feet in the swimming pool. And the hospitalero, I asked him where I could get a toothbrush. He went into the back room and gave me one, a brand new one in a little cellophane. And
so swimming pool, green grass in the middle of a 250-kilometre wide desert called the Meseta. Sounds like heaven. You were about to mention some places that were very hospitable. Would you like to mention one of them?
There's another one, the town before it in Castrojeriz, or you can pronounce that in English accent, Javi at Rosalia, Albergue Rosalia, is really, really, really lovely. I love Roncesvalles because it's just, the first place I stay. It's got those big vaulted ceilings. I actually quite like the municipal, the sweet little, they're not little usually, they're big, but I really like the municipal albergues. They're just basic and,
sometimes they're free as well, aren't they?
Sometimes they're free. They used to be all free in Galicia, but they're not anymore. The one in Estella, I quite like.
Yeah. There's obviously lots of places that have, that you've taken to your heart along the way, but the ones that stand out would be obviously this place with the swimming pool. in Boadilla del Camino, and Javi in Castro Jerez. And can you say the name of the albergue again, please?
The albergue is Rosalia.
Rosalia. Okay, thank you very much. So anyone passing by there soon or going on the Camino soon, take note and maybe you can stay there. But from my own personal account, I would recommend. I think you were there the same night as me. It was the albergue in Grañón.
Oh yeah,
in La Rioja.
Right. That's where I met you, isn't it?
That is correct. And the it's a parish albergue. It's definitely not the Savoy, but what it lacks in comfort, it definitely makes up for in hospitality. You not only is there a free meal, but I mean the atmosphere is absolutely beautiful, isn't it? Like 50, 60 views sat round a table in the attic of a church. It's like a banquet, isn't it? I absolutely love that night. That night will live with me for the rest of my life. Just sat round a table, 50 of us round a table, people from all over the world. I just remember that absolutely lifts my spirit every time I think of it. Such a special night and a special place. So
it is quite special. It's actually what I had imagined that the Camino would be, and that's where I found.
I could not agree more. I think you've just summed it up perfectly there. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
There's one that's soon after that, and you have to choose between the two or have a very short day one day, called Acacio and Orietta, who are a Brazilian couple, and they have an albergue that's one of the most welcoming and lovely. They invite you in and make a meal, and you sit around, a similar thing, but it's smaller, and it's in a town called La Rioja del... Oh, damn it. I'll have to get that name to you. It's right after Grañón. It's like maybe 8 kilometers farther on. One more I'd like to mention is in San Juan de Ortega.
Yeah.
It's this old monastery. There's not even a town. There's a little bar where you can get some food, and they give you this typical garlic soup. Every night they make this meal for the pilgrims with typical garlic soup. And again, it's just one of those moments of, wow, being transported back in time somehow.
I remember actually seeing you there one evening with Jules and with Irish Peter. And I think you guys had probably drunk a bit more beer than you had water on the way there, to be honest with you.
I was actually, that night, we had walked way too far. We were going to stop at the
temple. I remember, yeah.
And they walked well ahead of me. I didn't even know if I was going to make it. I was just like, 1 foot in front of the other, kind of hunkered into myself. And I got there and got the last bed. And so I was probably drunk on exhaustion as well as probably beer at that point.
I remember you all looked a little bit worse for wear, to be honest with you, because you, like me, had done 45 kilometers that day to get there. So I do remember it so fondly that night. So San Juan de Ortega as well, the monastery albergue there. You literally just fall out the forest, don't you? And you're there. You're literally on.
Interminable because you can't see anything. A lot of times, what really keeps me going on the Camino is, even though it's far, far, far in the distance, I can see that church, and I'm walking towards something. Whereas there are a few days, and that's one of them, where you just can't. There's no landmark. You have no idea how much longer it's going to be.
Yeah, it's just a monotonous sound of your boots, and that's all you've got to go on, isn't it? Yeah, very tough. Can be very tough mentally, those kind of days. Yeah. Whereas when you see that church rise up from the distance, like a child's fold out book, and just like, yes, we're nearly there. With every step that church comes into focus, and that church tower, that's a magical feeling. In actual fact, that's one of my favourite things about the Camino, when you see that on the horizon, something on the horizon, you make for it. What would you say your favourite thing about the Camino is?
Well, you've mentioned some of them. That would be one of them. We've talked about how you can form connections with people you might never even meet otherwise, who are from such different walks of life. I like the basicness of it, the lifestyle. Actually, get up, you get dressed, you walk all day, you wash your clothes, you have something to eat, you do whatever you do because someone is there that you have a conversation and you get up and do it again. It's actually the only life that makes perfect sense to me. The life that most of us are living, and I'm not really even living it anymore, is get up and go to work in a job you may or may not like, to make money, to live someplace you may or may not like, to just keep doing it. And I don't know, it's a little soul deadening, I can see in some people, not everyone, obviously, but just the very simplicity of the life and the way that you can meet people and form a connection and a bond with people quite quickly, because there's not all that inhibitions of oh, well, I'm this and you're that. And
so it's food, water and shelter and friends. You've got everything you need there, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah. That's all. That was, that what I was thinking along the way, just how great it was to free yourself from the irksome obligations of everyday life. It's the sense of freedom and how much it lifts your spirit is incredible. And like you say, it really is about, obviously everyone's approach to the Camino can be different, and some people might get home and be so sick of sleeping in albergues that they can't wait to get home.
Right.
But for me, I knew that it was a very tough transition to make from being a pilgrim to being a civilian, like walking from Technicolor kaleidoscope world to black and white. Going back to work, and it's bloody tough. And in terms of that being your favourite thing, it's maybe taking that philosophy into everyday life and trying to live with that spirit in everyday life. Sometimes the daily drudgery can crush your spirit, but I think the strength you draw from your experience as a pilgrim can definitely help you to reconnect with that energy. Talk about the best parts. What do you think was the hardest part?
Well, I've actually done the Camino 6 times since, so they run together a little bit. On that Camino, the hardest part was my emotions. I had a whole emotional interaction with a certain person that was really hard, but I wrote some really good poetry from it. So, in retrospect, it was really nice, but I think it was the expectation of something that wasn't fulfilled was the hardest part for me. Whereas in that Camino, I was so happy to be free that I really didn't even feel the hardship of the walking. In Camino since, I have felt how hard it is to walk that far, because I wasn't as fueled maybe also by my emotions in other ones.
So you said this interaction was with someone on the Camino. You were on the Camino with. Right. Okay. So it wasn't regarded to being recently divorced.
No, it wasn't actually.
Okay. So how did the Camino help you come to terms with that and understand it, accept it even?
My divorce?
No, maybe a divorce as well. Yeah, but also referring to the question about the expectation of something that might happen with a certain someone.
Yeah. Well, it was the Camino itself is what absolutely provided what I needed, which was, well, just get up and walk. There was none of this. If I were, in a home, I could have imagined wallowing around and, getting blue and staying home and being downcast. But on the Camino, you just get up and walk.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you just get up and walk, and walking itself is therapeutic. It's being connected to the land and the air and the people and all of it. So it gives this really visceral awareness of, well, life is just life. Your feelings are going to change no matter what. And just keep walking.
So it was the actual act of walking itself, putting one foot in front of the other, being out there holding hands with Mother Nature, that helps you kind of not ruminate, and it didn't help it stopped those feelings from intensifying into something negative.
And not even just Mother Nature, because I like the towns as much as I like natural bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine that you're sat here with someone that maybe they've seen the movie The Way, maybe they've read a few books on the Camino, and they're really, really interested in it, but they're maybe a bit too scared to go, or they're not sure. What would you say to convince them?
Well, depending who they were, I would offer to go with them, because I like
right.
time.
That's very nice of you, Tiera. Another excuse to go, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if I could come up with a little formula for that, because I would just ask them questions and see who they really were, and invite them into an awareness of what the Camino could offer in terms of seeing themselves in a new way, or getting back to the basics, or connecting with their body. You know, that's a wonderful thing about the Camino, is so many people live their whole lives not even aware that their body is actually the thing that's alive. You know, we can get really mentally polarized. And so I would actually ask questions of someone to see where they were at, and what the fear was. And then I'd give some really, really good basic information to allay those fears if possible. Like, for instance, there are now these transport taxis that will take your pack from one town to the next, so you don't have to have this really heavy thing on your back. If you don't like staying in really simple places like albergues with a lot of people in the room, you can stay at hotels. You know, so sometimes those are the kind of things that people fear. If it's a fear of the unknown, I would just say get over it.
So lots of takeaways and carry-outs for everyone who may be thinking about doing it or about to do it. Tiera, thank you so much for your time. Buen camino, peregrina.
Buen camino, peregrino.
So, just to summarize over those key takeaways from that interview with Tiera, she mentioned how to get to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. Basically, all you have to do is fly to Biarritz and get a train from there. She talked about her favourite albergues that she recommends you stay into. The albergue in Boadilla del Camino with the swimming pool. I'll put a link to that on our Facebook page with the address. That's the Pilgrims Podcast Facebook page. The monastery albergue in San Juan de Ortega. Sorry, that's San Juan de Ortega. And that's just, I think, a stage before Burgos. There was also an albergue Tiera mentioned called Rosalia in Castro Jerez. And that was with a hospitalero called Javi. As well as that place, she mentioned another one called, I think it was the albergue, the Peregrino albergue in Viloria de Rioja. And she said she liked that place in particularly because of the hosts Acacio and Orieta, who she said were particularly lovely. She also recommended you buy some Right blister socks, and you can get them at www.rightblistersocks.com. And Right is spelled W-R-I-G-H-T. Okay, so if you want to take that tip from Tiera, so your blister busting tip there. Before finishing, I'd like to recommend another brilliant Camino de Santiago podcast, My Camino, hosted by Dan Mullins. He delves deeper into his guest's personal Camino experience, and it's a great listen. Lastly, if you're looking for a book to read to get in the mood for your Camino, or to reconnect with that special energy life on the road brings, you might enjoy my light-hearted memoir. Just go to Amazon, type in the search bar The Only Way is West, and you'll see my book come up. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next week. Meantime, buen camino, fellow peregrinos.